love that every single time. No mai haere mai, and welcome to the official fourth main panel of Marginalia Lit Fest Live 2026. I'm your host, Jackie Lee Morrison. Thank you for being here, whether you're tuning in live, I can see if you're tuning in live, or keeping up later with the recording. Our fourth panel is Stories, Sovereignty, and Reclamation, with two storytellers I admire very much. There is a way as well, so please stay to the end to find out how to win. So I'll introduce our panel and then we'll jump straight into it. First up, we have Emele Ugavule. Emele is a Tokelauan, Uvid, and Fijian storyteller whose work centers on Indigenous oceanic storytelling. Her work has included the Sydney Opera House, Netflix and Mad One Films, ABC Australia, Creative New Zealand, and Sony Australia. Emele is a founding member of Studio Kin, an Indigenous-led creative studio and collective, served as the creative director of Talanoa, a platform dedicated to oceanic digital storytelling, and co-founder of Yavu Ni Mataka, an Indigenous futures-focused social enterprise with her husband. So please welcome Emele. I have some fun little sound effects as well, so we're going to do that. You have to do it when you're live. And next, Tīhema Baker. Tīhema is a writer from Otago. Writing often explores the complex interactions between and with Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā based on personal and professional experience. He's the author of satirical novel Turncoat, which was long-listed for the Jan Medlicott Acorn Prize for Fiction at the Ockham New Zealand Book Awards 2024. His next novel, Wundea Taniwha, explores Māori fatherhood and mental health and releases 11th of August 2026. So welcome to Thank you both so much for being here today. Since we only have an hour, I'll call on you each to speak, but please feel free to jump in. And if you are watching live and you have any questions for our panel, please pop the comments as we go, and I'll go through them in the last 5-ish minutes of the session. So let's start off by both of you please telling us a little bit more about you and where your practice began. Tīhema, do you want to go first?
Yeah, ka pai. I te tuatahi, morena tātou, tēnā koe, Jackie, nau I rite tō tātou nei kōrero, o tira ki a koe hoki Emele, pai te kite anō ki a koe, o tira tēnā tātou katoa, ngā mihi o te wā o Matariki, ki a tātou. So kia ora, I'm Tīhema, yep, and as Jackie said, I'm a writer from Otaki. I guess my practice began since I could pick up a pen, really. I've been a writer for as long as I can remember, because I've been a storyteller for as long as I can remember too. Just always loved telling stories. I used to draw a lot as a boy. So I would draw lots of characters. I would draw things from the media that I was consuming. So it was a lot of like X-Men, Pokemon was like a big one when I was a boy. So I'd draw these characters in kind of established universes, and then I would write stories about them. And then eventually I just sort of started writing my own stories, I guess, and drawing my own characters too. I don't do that so much anymore, but that was a big part of it, the sort of the visual design of characters and things first that I then go and write stories about. And I guess why I gravitated to writing fiction mostly, I think it's the sense of control that it gives me over the narrative. I'm not familiar at all with the world of like theatre or film or anything like that, but I can understand that those are hugely collaborative, which is part of the magic, right? That's part of how amazing those art forms are. That it's all these people contributing something. But on the other side of that, I think with a novel, noting that you also do collaborate a lot in the writing of a novel, but at the end of the day, it's your writing, it's your story, it's your words on the page. And I think that sort of appeals to me, that kind of degree of ownership and control. And that, I guess that's sort of what we're talking about today in my eyes is story sovereignty and really having that ownership. So I think that's what it's about for me.
Cool. And Emele, how about you? Where did it all begin for you? And can you share a little bit about what you do?
Kia ora. Yeah, thank you, Tīhema, for starting us off, and Jackie for the invitation to be part of this conversation. Just acknowledging that I'm zooming in from the land of the Gadigal peoples and acknowledging their elders past, present and future. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. For me, I mean, stories have always been a big part of my life because of who I am. That's how I was raised, the way that I was taught to understand my culture as someone in diaspora. And my practice primarily has always been in embodied storytelling. So um, I have trained as an actor. I went through very traditional conservatoire training, and then myself became a lecturer in performing arts, and started to move towards writing for, I guess, similar reasons to Tīhema. Like I began to understand that there is something different about being able to bring your own stories and worlds that you envision to life through putting pen to paper. I came up through like devising, and I'm a really big advocate for devising work, and that's primarily something that I love to teach emerging artists. But because of the realities of the industry that I work in, it's very hard to be able to present and produce work collaboratively, because of the way the IP works. And also, like, this industry is just like, it doesn't support having multiple collaborators on a work financially. So it's hard to resource yourself. So those are some of the reasons that I moved towards writing. And now my work primarily at the moment focuses very much so on looking at like science, fantasy, and water rights, primarily like the myth of Aquanalius in Oceania. So I'm really interested in the work that Tīhema does. It was a huge influence on my master's research, actually. So it's a real honor to be here and in conversation with him again. And yeah, just like looking at the ways that our superpowers as Indigenous peoples are always kind of in us and in the knowledge and in community and kinship that we have been raised in. So yeah, that's me. Kia ora.
Beautiful. So let's give people a little bit of a closer idea about the sort of thing that you've been working on. So could you give us both a short blurb of your most recent work? So Tīhema, if you want to start and tell us about One Day at Taniwha.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just kind of excited about this because it arrived yesterday, but it's like the final copy. It just sort of arrived. I'm still stoking out about it. So there it is.
Amazing.
One Day at Taniwha.
Stunning.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cover. I should shout out, I guess, Todd Atticus designed it. And I hope I get this right. The photo is, I think, Rich Thurston. I hope I've got that right. That's where that came from. But yeah, I'm so stoked with that, and I can't wait for it to launch in a few weeks' time. But One Day at Taniwha is it's a novel about a young Maori father with a newborn, well, a 4-month-old baby. And he's struggling to cope really with the adjustment to parenthood, but he's also just struggling with being Māori in 2026 Aotearoa. And the book is really about his unraveling mental health, but it's also about understanding mental health and mental illness. Sometimes not necessarily purely a mental illness, but something it might be more of the way to something more spiritual going on. So that's informed by lots of my work I've done in the mental health space, particularly with tāne Māori, Māori men, and yeah, understanding mental illness from a kaupapa Māori place. So yeah, that's that in a nutshell.
Amazing. And I'm going to ask you as well, Tīhema, if you wouldn't mind just quickly talking about the previous book that you wrote as well.
Yeah, for sure. So that's Turncoat. Turncoat is a satirical novel about the Māori public servant experience. So it's set in a future version of Earth that's been colonized by aliens, and it's a very obvious parallel to Aotearoa today. You can kind of read the aliens as Pākehā, and you can read the humans as Māori, and it's about this sort of naive, idealistic human who wants to make a difference for his colonized people, and he decides the best way to do that is to go and get a job for the alien government. And the book's really about his failure to do what he sets out to do. Yeah.
Yes, it's very interesting to me that the things that compel you and the things that you want to write about are things that you're really going through in the moment. So when you were working as a public servant, that's where that book came from. And now that you're a young father, that's where that book has come from as well.
Yeah, I guess I'm just finding that I think I'm processing a lot is what I'm doing, and writing about these things helps me process them. And it's like, well, if I'm going to write about them for that purely, I guess, kind of selfish reason, first and foremost, I might as well turn it into something that other people can read about, because I know I'm not the only one going through these things. So I hope that others sort of connect with these sort of life experiences that I'm going through. Yeah.
Beautiful. And Emele, how about you? Why don't you tell us about the most recent project that you have been working on?
Yeah, as mentioned earlier, I have a speculative theatrical universe that I've created called Aquanalius, which is named after the legal term Aquanalius. And it spans 5 plays, and we've just presented 2 of those plays as the double bill at Cirque Theatre in Te Whanganui Aotearoa. The first play is Toihai, which is set in a British museum in 100 years in the future, imagining that my people in Tokelau have been completely displaced because our island has been submerged, and we have been moved to Birmingham in England. And it follows, yeah, a young woman called Kalala, who was a tour guide in the British Museum. And as a result of Oceania becoming submerged, all of our taonga has been digitized in the British Museum. And so it looks at what life could look like for our people if we are forced to, one, obviously migrate, but two, digitize all of our memories and our artifacts that are dear to us. And then the second play is called Talal Vaka, which happens 10 years later, and sit in the British Museum, but it's now been turned into a data processing center called Neuronet. And Kalala is joined by 3 other characters, Serima, Lolohea, and Hio. And basically, it's looking at, the role of memory institutions and what's happening with our governments now, and how closely they are becoming intertwined with tech, like mega tech companies, and what that is doing to memory and community and cultural responsibility. So we just did that at Cirque Theatre, and we are touring it to Bulu, and we'll be presenting it in from the 6th of August on Wajak Puja. So that's been my world for a good 6 months.
Oh, wow, amazing. I wish I don't leave the house very much. That's why this entire festival's online, so I can just sit at home. But I wish that I had been to see these shows at Circa. I should pay attention a little bit more. They sound absolutely amazing. Well, let's move into our bigger question and topic of today's panel, which is, what does story sovereignty mean to you? How would you explain the concept to our audience? Emele, do you want to start?
Yeah, for me, I mean, for me, it's such a big, actually expensive, all-encompassing term, but in its very simplest form to me, it is having the means and the agency to tell my stories the way that I want to tell them, and having the resourcing and support to be able to do that as well. And that includes the actual like story itself and the delivery of it, as well as all of the kind of like wraparound support. So things like marketing, things like, like the actual resourcing and materials that are needed for it. Really being able to have full agency and control of all elements, and also being aware of that, knowing, just because I'm a playwright doesn't mean that I'm only interested in the actual play itself. Like actually taking notice of and being aware of all conversations involved with all people who come near and touch the story that I'm presenting. So yeah, for me, it's that sits at the heart of it, but there are so many kind of like different threads that it starts to kind of weave together.
And Tīhema, what about you?
Oh, I totally talk a lot of what Emily said. I think that's summed it up quite well. If the only things I might have to add are more about how I think this might be expressed, as a writer, for example, in my case. So in my relationship with my publisher, for example, I'm kind of reliant on them for all the resource, the marketing. I mean, I could try and do that myself, but it would be hard and cost a lot of money and cost a lot of time. So there's a sort of partnership there. But I guess that's the point, is that it's a partnership, or it should be a partnership. And I'm lucky enough that with both the publisher for my next book, More Press, and my last publisher, Lawrence and Gibson, it's been very much a partnership where I feel like my sovereignty as the storyteller is totally respected. And I know that's not the case for a lot of writers, especially early writers, new writers with their first book, who might feel like, I just have to do whatever a publisher tells me because I desperately want to be published. So it's hard to sort of own that story sovereignty, I guess. But that's the ideal, is that actually you kind of have the power over the story and how it should be told, how it should be presented, and your publisher respects that. And like I say, I've really enjoyed that type of relationship where, as an example, through the editing process, publisher will make suggestions for things that need changing, and they might suggest some things stronger than others. But it's really respectful, and at the end of the day, it's your choice, Tīhema. You can do this or you could do that. It's up to you. And that's, I think, my sovereignty as a storyteller is being respected. The only other thought I had about this was kind of about, in terms of ownership of the story, if we're talking about stories that are kind of based on reality, or like if I think about, say, stories about my tupuna, for example, those stories don't just belong to me, they belong to lots of people. So story sovereignty is a question of who does the story belong to, and kind of who has the right or who has the mana to tell it. There are some stories from our history that we might not want for public ears. So all those types of questions come into play about, is it appropriate, or do you kind of have the mana to tell that story that doesn't just belong to you? That's kind of story sovereignty in action as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's interesting because that is a topic that comes up quite often. Who has the right to tell this story? It often comes up in different circumstances, but within your own iwi as well, that is very important. Like, do you have the right to tell the stories of your past, your iwi? Actually, Tīhema, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the particular practices of Lawrence and Gibson, because I find that so interesting, and I think it really gives you further sovereignty over your work in a very physical sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lawrence and Gibson is an independent publisher based in Te Whanganui-a-Tara, Wellington. But I would say, first and foremost, they're a writers collective. So they're all about promoting the writers of their collective, celebrating them, just trying to support each other. And I guess how that best manifests is through publishing the collective members' work. So Lawrence and Gibson has access to its own press, printing press, that they can develop all the books themselves. So Turncoat was published by Lawrence and Gibson, and it's basically a whole bunch of writers just coming together and doing all the things that a traditional publisher would do. So it's heavily reliant on like voluntary time. But it's fun though. Like, so in terms of actually publishing the book, you'll kind of set a date and you'll come into the press. You've literally got a printer just going non-stop, printing out all the pages. You've got a guillotine, you've got to cut all the pages, chuck it in the binder with some glue, and kind of it's best with two people kind of operating it sort of in tandem, gluing the cover to the book, and then you've got to cut that down as well. So every copy of Turncoat that's out in the world has been made by hand that way. And so every version is slightly imperfect, slightly different. We've had some cases of the pages falling out, but it's just kind of part of the process. But there's something very special about that too, the kind of making your book with your own hands. And again, the relationship that you have through the editing of the book and the marketing of it, because it's just writers sort of doing it for each other and supporting each other in that way. I think that allows for a really strong sovereignty as well as a writer. I've got a lot of love for the Lawrence and Gibson whānau, and love what they do.
Yeah, and I've told you this before, but it was actually very funny to me when I was reading Turncoat, because I would open it up and suddenly a page would pop out. It was adding to the reading experience. I would open it and all these pages would disappear, and I'd be like, oh no, I have to put them back in.
And I feel the need to say too that like Lawrence and Gibson were like, absolutely, we'll replace that copy. Like it's just sort of part and parcel of how we make our books, I guess. But yeah, it might have been you, Jackie, or it might have been a review that I read somewhere where someone said, like actually kind of felt like it was mimicking Daniel's experience through the book of like just falling apart. So I guess I'll take that too.
Yeah, it really added to it. It was sort of ancient proverb, live, love, open it up, pages falling out. That worked really well for me. A very immersive experience. So since we're talking about collectives, actually, Emele, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about Studio Kin and how that came about and how you're a founding member there, and what Studio Kin is.
Yeah, so Studio Kin is a collective of Indigenous women who are storytellers, and we have a diverse range of practices. It started in 2021, basically as an opportunity in the middle of the pandemic for us to connect and create together. We were already kind of like in an unofficial capacity collaborating and working together. So we decided to actually form a collective and give ourselves a name. And we've been going since then, and have produced a whole range of things from events to theatre shows. We started our own small imprint and produced some poetry books, as well as posters. We've done pretty much anything that we wanted to do. We just found a way, and similar to Lawrence and Gibson, just came together and supported each other, learned the skills, and just made it happen. So yeah, it's a really special group of women who are based in Te Whenua Moemoeā, across all different countries on the West Coast, on the East Coast, Fiji, and then also in Aotearoa as well. But our members are from all over the world, from Asia, from Africa, from the Pacific, from the Torres Straits. It's a pretty diverse group of women and storytellers that I feel very lucky to call my friends as well.
Yeah, I first came to know Emele through the literary festival the mini literary festival that you ran, where Tīhema was a guest. And it was funny because my husband and I are both really into speculative fiction, but sometimes some of the speculative fiction talks that you go to can either be a little bit on the sort of basic level of what aliens why are we writing about aliens. And we went in, and the first question that you asked, Emele, was so mind-blowing and all-encompassing of everything in the universe. My husband and I, our mouths dropped open, and we were just like, oh, this is great. It was so good. Well, so I'd really love to hear from both. You've talked a little bit about this already, but what are some of the specific things that you do in your practice to reclaim story sovereignty? And Tīhema, you've already talked a little bit about Turncoat, but maybe we can dig in a little bit deeper here to tell us about the origins of Turncoat.
Yeah, for sure. So Turncoat came from a couple of places. The first was coming to terms with my own experiences as a Māori public servant, what it means to be Māori and working for the Crown. So just to clarify, my background has been in public service based in Wellington as a policy advisor. I'm not doing that now, which is great. But years and years of my professional career spent working for the Crown. And I had a point in my life, I think it would have been about 2019, where I was just very unhappy and quite angry too, and was sort of trying to figure out what is going on with me. Anyway, ended up going to therapy and talking through a lot of stuff. And some of the things that were contributing to my unhappiness was realizing, oh man, this is actually taking a huge toll on me, my work, in the public service. So I sort of started to question a lot of things, why I was doing what I was doing. And anyway, my therapist one day had a conversation with me about if I could be doing anything, what would I do? And I said, well, I'd write stories all day if I could. And so she encouraged me to think about how I could make that happen. And I'd always wanted to do the Masters in Creative Writing at Victoria University. And I thought, I really need a project. I want something specific to go into that program with. So I was trying to come up with an idea, and I sort of joked about the idea of writing a memoir of my experiences, but I quickly threw that out because I thought, Wellington's too small, my career's too early, I don't want to burn bridges, like, nah, I don't think that's a good idea. But I'd also had this other concept floating around in my head for ages, which was like an allegory for the colonization of Aotearoa using aliens. And I just hadn't quite figured out how to put that together yet. So these two ideas sort of combined one day, and I thought, well, I could write about my experiences as a Māori public servant, but just through this allegorical lens of an Earth that's been colonized by aliens. And that's really where it came from. So I wrote up a sample, sent it in with an application, and was lucky enough to get in. And it all kind of went from there. So in terms of story sovereignty, I guess the things that I'd pick out were one, telling my story and finding a way to do it that was in a creative way, in a way that worked for me, I guess. But the other thing is being really intentional too. The thing that I've really picked up from that experience is like making and creating the time and space to write, and kind of, I know there are lots of people who can just write all the time. They steal time in the morning or on their lunch break or in the evening. And I just find it really hard to do that. So I guess a practice thing that I've picked up is I make a conscious effort to set aside time. And it's not just the stealing a 5 minutes, hour. One day at Taniwha, most of it was written because I applied to Creative New Zealand for funding. And I just said, I'm going to write for 10 weeks. And I need the funding to kind of supplement my income to do that. So that's how I've sort of been approaching writing. I've been able to negotiate with my work that I work a 4-day week, and my 5th day is for work I do for my iwi, but writing as well. So that's me just sort of taking charge of my own writing time, I guess, and being upfront with my employers. Hey, this is important to me. If it's not what you're looking for, kapai, I'll go somewhere else. But yeah, just kind of owning my need and my right to tell stories, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Emele, what about you? Is there anything specific that you do in your practice?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of things that I like to do, but the biggest one for me really is about well-being. I'm someone who has chronically had eczema for most of my life, and that has really impacted like the quality of my life and my experience of the world. And recently, in the last year, developed an autoimmune condition, and so that kind of experience affected my mobility, and so as someone who's like experienced these like ongoing illness challenges, a big thing for me has been about like wellness. Like if I am able to make the time for myself to be well, then I have the capacity to also be able to be creative. And so that's about like making sure that I have the right vitamins that I need, making sure that I have the right amount of sleep and the right sleeping conditions. Something as simple as like the type of sheets that I sleep on and the fabric that I wear, like all of these like little things that contribute to my well-being so that I don't have like a skin flare up and therefore I can be creative is one big thing. And then the second is just about like the people that I surround myself with. So as mentioned, and as you know, like theater is incredibly collaborative. And so being able to have agency is also about building the right team, and building a team of people that believe in the work, and also that um, yeah, just really wonderful, kind, generous people. And at times, because theater is not $1 million, at least not in my in my lived experience, it's not $1 million maker. So, there are some times where you do have to volunteer hours. And so a big part of being able to make sure that my vision and the work can happen as I desire it to is being around good people who believe in the work as well, and believe in me and trust me, and that I trust as well. So yeah, I would say those are the two biggest things in my life. Um, and then actually, sorry, there's one more, which is like time. So like temporal sovereignty is a really big thing in my life. And that's like I've spent the last 6 years focusing my research on temporal sovereignty. That's like a core kind of like key undercurrent of the Aquanalius universe, is like what is our relationship with time. And so if I am able to kind of like design my relationship to time in my body, in my environment, and in my work life in a way that prioritizes kinship relations and also like well-being, then I feel like I have the capacity and and yeah, like the right circumstances to be able to be creative and make decisions that are yeah, like fruitful. So yeah, I would say those are the key things that I'm always kind of working towards, and it to help support story sovereignty in my practice.
And firstly, I just want to say thank you so much again for joining us this morning, because I know that it's a couple of hours earlier for you. So you're sacrificing sleep, you're sacrificing a little bit of illness to be here with us. Plus, you have a workshop later today. So you're jamming things in today. So I really appreciate that. I just want to touch a little bit on wellness, because I'm so sorry to hear about the autoimmune disease. I have so many autoimmune diseases that I actually have a collective noun for it. So so I completely understand. I know I've reached the point of being so unwell they had to give me a whole name. But it's it is something that I think we as artists often forget, is to look after ourselves and to take the time and to really, practice that self-care. And it's self-care is a term I think that gets tossed around quite a lot, but I think it's really important when you are an artist to be looking after yourself as best you can, to be getting that sleep, to, get the sheets that you need to have the vitamins. Because, Tīhema, from working in mental health and also with having a little one now, how precious time is, how precious it is to be healthy and be well for yourself, but also for your family. And the other thing I wanted to touch on as well that you said, Emele, is about surrounding yourself with people who believe in you, and that's such an interesting thing and kind of an opposite of the writing life, because with the writing life you're sort of alone a lot of the time until it gets to a stage where you're actually publishing, and you can choose to have, like Tīhema, like you said, the publishers that you've worked with have really been people that you've trusted to work with you and to work with your work. And yeah, I really love that for both of you.
Yeah, can I just jump in on that, Jackie?
Please.
Because absolutely, like at the end of the day, like I said, like you've got what the novel say, you've got to write it. Like you're the only one who can tell that story. But I should say, a huge collaborative effort on it before it got to publishers. So once I'd got it to a point that I felt like I've got a kind of complete narrative here, sort of start to finish, and I sort of feel like I've done as much as I can do, I sent it out to, I think, would have been 3 or 4 different writers who I really trust and who I have a really good relationship with, and who I know can give me the feedback that I need, not just the, yay, this is great, but this is great, but there's some other stuff over here that you could work on, or that's not so great, as well as 2 people with lived experience of acute mental illness, one who's a good friend of mine and another who I met through work. And I guess I encourage that as a huge part of the writing practice as well. Like absolutely, so much of it is just a solo thing. but yeah, there is just so many other writers out there that have just contributed to this book just being what it is. It would not be that without that collaboration as well.
Yeah, and that's also a really important point of I think something that's very important to story sovereignty is community and people around you who will not only reflect you but will also challenge you. I think that's a really important thing to bear in mind.
Yeah, and sorry, I know I'm jumping in here, but this is just
No, I love
a few ideas. So just to share, one of the writers that I sent this to, someone who I have a great relationship with, I admire very much, respect hugely, think of them as a friend, mentor. They had some pretty strong feedback on this book. They weren't they thought it needed quite a bit more work, and there was some fundamental stuff that they kind of felt like wasn't working. And it really threw me coming from this particular person. It probably did sort of knock my confidence a little bit, but once I went away and really sat with it and I sort of tested some of the ideas with some other people, I just had a very strong, puku, like gut sense, like I respect that person's whakaaro, absolutely. But I think what I'm doing is, I'm happy with what I'm doing, despite what this person's whakaaro is. And that was a real moment of story sovereignty for me as well. It was a bit scary, sort of, with this person, because I respect them so much, to be like, sorry, but I'm kind of not going to take that on board, sort of thing. But also the strength of our relationship, endured that, no problem. But yeah, that was a real moment of sometimes finding that line between being really proud of your work and knowing that it's the right way you want to take it, despite feedback you might get from others. That can be a really hard thing, but also a hugely empowering thing as well.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. So both of you have worked in fields that are affected by colonized practices. Is there anything positive that you actually learned from being in those environments that changed the way you approach your work? Because we very often talk about the negatives of being in colonized environments, but I feel like we should flip it on its head a little bit. Emele, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, what do I think?
Oh, it's
No,
so
look,
hard to dig deep.
yeah. Look, you know what, I am a product of what Professor Ipili Hauofa calls or refers to as like the single economy in the Pacific. He wrote this essay called The New Pacific Society, which talks about how all of the Pacific has been kind of drawn into an economy that is run by Australia and New Zealand. And I am a product of that. My mom is from Tokelau, and she moved to Aotearoa as a scholarship kid at the age of like 8. And my dad moved to Aotearoa as a shipbuilder at the age of like 26 or 27. And through their migration, I was born in Aotearoa, and then they migrated to Australia, and I was raised there. Like, there is, inherently a lot of privilege that I have just through mobility alone, because of colonization, that my husband, for example, doesn't have. So my husband was born and raised in Fiji. He's a Fijian citizen. He's a farmer and a fisherman by trade. It's very difficult in Fiji if you do not have a salary to open a bank account. Even today, my husband can't open a bank account without my salary. Like, by virtue of just inherently my parents moving when they did, and the colonization of Tokelau, and the unique relationship that Fiji had with New Zealand at the time that my father migrated, I have been able to economically benefit. And as a result, create migration opportunities for my husband and for his family, and for our children. And so, yeah, like, even though there is a real unfair treatment of Pacific Islanders that I'm really vocal about as well from these governments, and the way that they use our people and our labor. I also like acknowledge that class is a really important part of these discussions about our relationships with colonization, and that I am middle class. And a big part of that is because of my parents' ability to migrate. So For me personally, I would say that's probably like the biggest positive. And because I, went to university and have this mobility in my life, it means that, right now, like I'm a full-time artist and I am um the sole income like earner for my family, and I can support my family full time on that. So I'm very, very privileged. But I'm like one of the few, and it's quite rare and difficult for even in 2026 for Pacific Islanders from the islands to have that level of mobility. So I guess that's one very big and important thing that I have, which is migration and my mobility. And it's allowed me not just economically, but also like socially to build these like wonderful connections with people like yourselves in various cities all over the Pacific. And that's something that I'm so incredibly grateful for because it has enriched my cultural literacy, my creative practice, and just like my spirit made me, I think, a better human. I would hope so. So yeah, those I feel like if positives are the ones that I would speak to.
I love that, and I can attest to the fact that you're a pretty great human. So, Tīhema, how about you? What positives have come out of your experiences?
Yeah. So if we're talking about like the work that I've done in central government, I think one of the positives is just understanding how complex that whole machine is, uh, and the complexity of the fact that it's full of human beings from all sorts of backgrounds. What I'm getting at is, I think it's easy, especially as a colonized people, to look at like the government, for example, and by government I mean not just the government of the day, but like the public servants who do the work every day, to just think, oh, they're all government, they all think the same, they all operate the same way, and that's actually just not true. The problem is ultimately the system that's been implanted here by this foreign power, and the system does require people to run it and operate it. But it's not. This is complex, and I hoped to try and bring some of that complexity into Turncoat, for example, where Daniel goes and works and meets people who are well intentioned, like they want to do well, but they just don't have the knowledge or the understanding. They come from a certain background, and good intentions, that's not enough. But it's all I'm trying to get at is that there are good people out there. There are good people trying to do good things in a system that isn't built to do good things for minorities, for Indigenous peoples. Um, and I guess the sort of flip side of that is me realizing that point. So the big learning for me, which is kind of the point of Turncoat really, was going, I'm never going to make the change that I want to make for my people from within that system. The place for me is on the ground, on my own whenua, with my own community. At the end of the day, I still got to pay my bills. So I'm not a public servant. I currently work for a PHO. So I'm not totally working for my own people, which would be the dream. But that's the goal one day. And I guess I don't have the delusion anymore. Well, I shouldn't be so unkind. I don't personally believe that it's possible for me to make the scale of change for my people. Other people still working in that system might, but for me, that's not where I see myself in in a few years' time, making the difference that I want to make.
And I think that leads beautifully into my next question, which is very often when you are the Māori writer or the Fijian director, comes with a level of responsibility to your community. But how much do you feel that responsibility and the responsibility to educate others falls on your shoulders as Indigenous storytellers? Tīhema, do you want to tackle that one first? It's a huge question. I know. I saw you looking down, and I thought I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, I'm thinking. So I feel like this will be a question that I'll later on in the day I'll go, damn, I wish I said this instead. But if I'm just thinking out loud, the I guess the main sense of responsibility that I feel is just to kind of do my whānau community and tupuna proud. I don't necessarily think that what I write or produce or say will be taken as the views of all of my people, because we are all diverse. We're all different. We're not all homogenous people. but I hope that they still just they're proud that I belong to them. Really, in terms of education, I guess I want to educate people to some extent, but it's not really what drives what I do. It's here's a story that is important to me and that I hope connects with people. I think it's more that I hope people feel something rather than learn something, and often those two go hand in hand. But it's more like it's the feeling that moves people, I think, and that changes whakaaro, changes intentions, and that's all I really want to do. And if I can do that in a way that feels real to me and is authentic to me and is authentic to the communities and the people that I belong to, well then, yeah, job done as far as I'm concerned.
And Emele, how about you? Do you feel like there's a level of responsibility sitting on your shoulders?
Yeah, I think there always is. I think, like my work is, I'm always looking for ways to incorporate heritage performance practices in my live performance work. So anything that has like hatele or like meke or sere or vuvu that has been composed by other people, like there is a responsibility to bring those into my work in a way that honors and uplifts them. Um, because yeah, I just have so much love and respect for the work of these composers, but also for them as like a storytelling modality as well. In terms of like educating people who are not from my communities, no, I don't really feel a responsibility, to be honest. Like, I think because of the type of nerd that I am, my work is inherently very like fact heavy and very research driven. And so, for someone who doesn't know anything about my islands, especially when they come and see like the shows, the double bill that is being presented at the moment, like, yeah, they'll get hit over the head with a lot of information about our relationship with the British Crown. But that's not necessarily me trying to, um, yeah, feel like they need to know all this stuff. It's me kind of like making sense of slash expressing my anger towards these like realities of the world, and for my own people as well, like wanting to be able to just remind us that there are these systems and legacies that we are a part of. So yeah, I feel a responsibility towards the things that exist in my community or my culture that already exist, and wanting to kind of like handle them with great care when they are integrated into my stories. But in terms of like educating people, there's only so much you can do where an audience will just take it and interpret it however they want. And so for me, the final goal isn't necessarily about educating people or holding their hand through a story, but similar to Tīhema, just being like, am I creating characters and a world that is really, like emotionally strong enough for people to see themselves, regardless of like their race or their gender or like what country they're in, even though it's set in, England in 100 years' time, can our diaspora in Australia or in Aotearoa see themselves in this story and reflect on what they're doing in their lives today? And so I feel like the emotion and the relationships really are the foundation and the anchor of the works more so than the facts. Like that's just a little bit of spice on the top. Um, yeah, so yes, I do have some sense of responsibility, but overall, like it's not primarily a driver for me as a director or as a writer.
And I think that's it always reminds me. This is a terrible thing I'm about to say, but there was this YouTube thing years and years ago, where it was this rap like read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. It's like the responsibility of learning more about something is up to the audience. It's up to you. Go read a book. I recommend some great books. So, what sorts of changes in the arts would you like to see to better support Indigenous storytellers? This is also another big question, but if you could wave a magic wand and say, these are the things that I would like to see. Emele, do you have some thoughts?
Money. I want
Yes.
people to have money. That is, I think, especially now more than ever, so important. Yeah, we're in a crisis. Artists are in a resourcing crisis in Aotearoa and in the Pacific, and it breaks my heart seeing so many wonderful, amazing, important stories and storytellers not getting that funding or the resourcing or like funding and crowdfunders, boosted campaigns being the only options that people feel that they have. So yeah, I would love to see a government that invests in the arts and shows us that the resourcing is reflective of what our output is, because yeah, there's billions of dollars that the arts creates per annum, and we're not getting that back in return. I would also love to see like more arts spaces, like if I could I don't know, somehow have a space, a hub that, is about resourcing and just, like I love libraries. I think libraries are such amazing, important spaces. And so would love to create a space like that that also brings our Pacific community together, brings our Māori community together, like just is about like relationships and a safe space for people to access resources for free. Something like that would be amazing. And then just like, yeah, support for families, for whānau, like knowing how difficult like for myself, I'm a mother of two, and being able to kind of like support artists to do their practice as parents, I feel like is really, really important, especially for things like residencies or like if you have traveling opportunities. There's been so many times where, especially when my baby was little, I either had to say no to an opportunity or I felt uncomfortable to ask, like, is it okay if I bring my husband and my toddler with me because I have to bring my baby with me who's breastfeeding right now, and he will help look after the baby while I do this work commitment. So yeah, just like greater support for families and understanding that like for us as Indigenous practitioners, like it's not just us. Always is like we're not just like the singular, but sometimes often we do have a whānau that comes with us, and knowing how to support and resource that accessibility need, I feel like is really important. So yeah, I guess like those oh, and actually sorry, there's one more thing I would say also, just like access in general, like in my industry at least, like in performing arts, there's not enough um awareness around accessibility needs, and what that looks like in terms of asking for it, but also like as makers providing that for your audiences. And so just more awareness around how we can be more inclusive and resourcing so that makers and writers can yeah, have those conversations and make work more inclusive for audiences, for families, for elders, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I hope that made sense.
No, completely, yeah. And I just want to shout out as well to Damien Levi from Upwater Press, who wrote this fantastic article the other day on thebigidea.com called Who Gets Published in Aotearoa. And it's really transparent data about the most recent data on publishing, gender, and ethnicity to see who is actually getting published. And unfortunately, we are very much failing on representation. So shout out to that. I just put that link up onto the screen so you can have a little read of that yourself later. So Tīhema, what do you think? What is one thing, or what many things would you like to see changed?
Just yeah, the money point. Is it really? There's just not enough. There's not enough funding for all the amazing art that is getting produced or that could be produced. And I do just feel the need to sort of clarify. I think agencies like Creative New Zealand get a lot of flack for this. They're not funding enough. They're not funding the right things. And I say this not as someone who's received Creative New Zealand funding, but as someone who has been a peer assessor, so an independent from Creative New Zealand, but who helps assess arts applications. There's just not enough money to go around for amazing arts applications. That's not Creative New Zealand's problem. It's the government's problem. They're not funding enough. So that's where the blame needs to be placed pretty squarely. I feel the need to say, yeah.
I feel like we can place quite a lot of blame on the government.
Oh yeah. I mean, this government in particular. But hey, to be fair, like actually, not a lot of governments previously have funded the arts enough either. So it's been a kind of chronic problem for a long time.
Great, thank you. So my last question, because we're going to have to wrap up pretty soon, because like I said, these hours, they just go so fast. Is there anything, I like to ask this question because I really like people to be able to look back reflectively on their work and themselves. Is there anything that you know now about your practice that you wish that you had known when you first started? Tīhema, I'm going to ask you first.
Well, I talked about my early influences being all the like cartoons and stuff that I consumed. And I think what that did to me was made me feel like for the type of writing that I originally wanted to write, which was hugely speculative, like my first novel, for example, which is a sort of young adult superhero, superpowers sort of book. My very first draft of that as a sort of 18-year-old, I think when I wrote that, like it was set in New York because I was like, well, all superhero stories are set in New York, so it kind of has to be there. No one will want to read it otherwise. So I just wish I had a stronger sense of my own story sovereignty, I guess, my own sort of Māoritanga, and to be kind of proud and staunch about that. I had to learn that over time. I had to unlearn all the Americanized influences that I have, and I wish I had just kind of got there sooner. Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that, because I didn't realize until I did Elizabeth Knox's world building class that all the characters I'd ever written had been white. And I kind of realized that and had a bit of a crisis because I thought, oh my God, why have I only ever written white characters? And I realized it's because that's all I ever saw. So that's why representation is so important. Emele, how about you? What do you know now that you wish you'd known at the beginning?
I think it's so boring, but the business of being an artist, I think really I was just YOLOing it for a long time when I first started. And that's because when you train as an actor, they don't really teach you about artist tax and business and all that kind of stuff. And replying to emails, just the responsibility of the business of being an artist. I think it just took me a long time to work it out. And now, as someone who mentors young artists, it's something that I always encourage artists to do. Like, it sucks. But yeah, I think if I had really understood that and understood, yeah, like money better as a younger artist, then maybe I would be in a better position where I am now. But I'm also grateful for having to learn along the way and learn through a lot of failures and a lot of trials and tribulations as well. That was just my path. But yeah, just like understanding business of being an artist and taking it seriously.
I think that's such an important point. Well, we do need to wrap up. So I'm going to ask both of you, where can our audience find you? And Tīhema, where are your books available? So Tīhema, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram. Geez, I don't even know what my thing is. There it is. Perfect. Thank you, Jackie.
I'm prepared.
Yeah, mostly on Instagram. My next book, One Day at Taniwha, is available for pre-order now from kind of most bookstores, and on 11th of August it'll be there. Turncoat is more available at more independent bookstores, so things like Unity Books in Wellington and Auckland. But you can also buy that directly online from the Lawrence Gibson website as well.
Stunning. And I'm just going to put a little plug for you. And Emele, how about you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram as well. I've just started an Instagram page, a public one, a couple weeks ago. So you can find me there, Yavuni Mataka. And that's just about my work with my husband as well. And if you're in Bulu, if you're in Wajak Buja, we've got a 2-week season over there. So yeah, come and say hey. Or we also have mob ticks and Tangata Moana tickets, so $15 tickets for anyone who is light on cash but still wants to come and see the show. And yeah, I'm bouncing around the Pacific, so I'll just pop up now and then, but you can find me online.
Beautiful. So thank you again so much to Emele and Tīhema for joining me this morning. The Instagram accounts have linked in there. They're also in the description box below, so please make sure you follow them. Now, Tīhema will be giving away a copy of Turncoat. If you would like to win, and I honestly think that this is like such a special book. I recommend it to people all the time. I really love it. If you'd like to win, pop a comment below with your Instagram handle, say one sentence why you'd like to win, and then I'll pick a winner and I will announce it on my Instagram. It's up on the screen now. It's at the end of the festival, so just make sure that you're following me there. Marginalia is a completely free festival, but if you would like to support my mahi and me to keep doing the things I'm passionate about, you can buy me a coffee. And where is my coffee link? There it is. You can buy me a coffee. So the link is on screen now, and it's also in the description box below. Our next panel is going to be in just under 30 minutes, and it is at 30 p.m. New Zealand, Tea for Tea Stories with Rem Wigmore and Always Becoming In, and it is right here. So thank you again so much, Emele and Tīhema. This has been such a fantastic conversation. Thank you. I really appreciate both of you being here.
Yeah, Ngami, Jackie, thank you.
Ngami, thank you. Thank you both.
Okay, thank you. All right, guys, see you in about half an hour.